Thank you very much. My name is Samantha Magic, and I'm with Islands Business Magazine. Madam Director General, before you came, you wrote about the leadership that the region had shown in June and through the sort of first phase of negotiations. And I think you sort of referenced the fact that you were looking to the region to continue that leadership role. What specifically would you like to see the region do and the Pacific WTO members do to continue that?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you. You must have read the opinion piece that I sent out. It wasn't. Let me put it this way. I do not believe we could have gotten the fisheries subsidies agreement we did without the role of the Pacific. They were instrumental. They were leaders in trying to make this happen. And we would like to see that continue in the second phase of the agreement and also in implementation of the first phase. So implementation of the first phase means depositing the instruments of acceptance of this agreement. We can't really begin to implement it until 2/3 of our members deposit instruments of acceptance. So part of the workshop we had here was also to facilitate that process. So leadership in doing that is what I'm asking for. If they were instrumental in making the agreement come together, they can be leaders in being the first to deposit these instruments so that we can actually get implementation started. The longer we wait, the more the big subsidizers will be able to fish illegally and deplete our oceans. So that's the kind of leadership. Let the Pacific Island countries be first off. Second, there are other aspects of work and negotiations that we have at the WTO apart from fisheries. We are also working on an agriculture agreement that has been under negotiation for more than 2 decades. And of course, agriculture, you're net food importing countries, and therefore having a good agricultural agreement that avoids distortions in agricultural trade and that assures that trade in food, feed, fertilizer is as free as can possibly be would be to the benefit of the Pacific Islands. So I would like a strong voice of the countries in that. So those are just 2 illustrations. We're also carrying out some reforms of the WTO. Every WTO member wants to see the dispute settlement system, which is not as functional as it could be, to be reformed and functioning properly, because it's called the jewel in the crown of the WTO. And if we are going to be making new rules, we want to make sure that that place where members can be brought if they don't obey the rules and where disputes can be settled is functioning well. Well, the Pacific Island countries can also be leaders in helping to push this reform. So just some illustrations of what I mean. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may just ask a follow-up, and it's broad for the entire panel. We've got limited resources, and some WTO members don't actually have a physical representation at the WTO. So is there more that can be done to leverage the limited resources we have and support to be able to actually engage more consistently and meaningfully? Because there's a small number of people doing a lot of heavy lifting, right?
Yes.
Thank you for your question. I think that's something that was actually raised during the conversations throughout the day. And it's not just the WTO that offers some assistance to all the Pacific Island countries with respect to by having a presence in Switzerland. The Swiss also are of assistance to certain countries, and I think they're also holding their hand up to say we may be able to assist. But it's something that's ongoing, and I think it's a genuine concern that was raised today, and it's been taken on board by the WTO and also in Geneva. So we should have some positive results out of it, which is it's not a problem, but it's something that's acknowledged. And for example, Tonga doesn't have a presence, but they did make it known to us. So it's something that's actually been looked at already. But of course, at the end of the day, we are all represented by the PIFS Secretariat. It's there, so you may not be there physically, but the PIFS Secretariat is there to actually take care of our interests also.
name is Eleanor Masilala, and I'm here for the Pacific Islands News Association, otherwise known as provides SPEC News. My question is for Madam DG. You've come to our country, you've listened to our representatives here. You've had a glimpse of how vulnerable our communities are. Going back to Geneva, how can you help us Pacific Islanders in our quest, in our request, particularly in the issues of overcapacity and overfishing?
Well, thank you very much. I think coming out here, we know that the region has the blue economy strategy that has laid out really the way that a very, very, very good strategy, if I may say so, that has laid out the way they see this economy going forward. And I think what we can do at the WTO is make sure that the agreements that we push with respect to fisheries takes account and takes cognizance of the objectives that have been put in this strategy. I think one very concrete thing that we can do is with respect to capacity building. And we're trying to do that first to help implement the agreement we already have, which is the first phase of the fishery subsidies agreement. But secondly, for the second phase, we have to make sure that any gaps in management capacity for the fisheries or in data collection or statistical analysis that we can help the Pacific Island Forum countries to take care of. We will try to do that, and we're pledged to try and support as much capacity building as we can. You saw that we signed an MOU this afternoon. We've been working together now for 22 years. And we've been signing this MOU. This is the 5th one, and we will continue to do that. But in addition, we have also opened a fisheries fund, so another capacity building for specifically for fisheries. So we intend to use that to help all the countries, including the Pacific Island countries, to strengthen fisheries management, data collection. We have also been talking to international financial agencies, since WTO is not a financing agency per se, and there may be other needs that need more resources. So I've actually been talking to the president of the World Bank and the World Bank team. The Asian Development Bank is also there. And what we're trying to do is see how we can work together with these other organizations to leverage resources in the event that you will need this kind of financing.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam. After the June meeting, the agreement was hailed as finally fulfilled one target, SDG 14.6. But there were differing views here in the region. Perhaps we can hear it from yourself. How does this agreement, how does this agreement provide appropriate and effective and special and differential treatment for countries like us in the Pacific, as well as target subsidies that contribute to overcapacity and overfishing?
Thank you. That's a good question. So the agreement was initially started out as one big comprehensive agreement. And that's the way it's been being negotiated for 2 decades with no results. So we just felt that this cannot continue. We can't have another decade. Whilst we're busy trying to get the perfect agreement, the oceans are being depleted. So during MC12, it was a decision came through, members agreed to perhaps take it in 2 stages. And actually the Pacific Islanders were instrumental. They saw that some of the aspects that they wanted on special and differential treatment were not going to be included in the first package. So you're right, they were not exactly happy with it. But at the end of the day, they included in the first phase some specific requirements that if the second phase that is going to deal with special and differential treatment is not negotiated before, within 4 years, the first agreement will lapse. So this is very powerful. It's never been done before to put that kind of, what do you call it? I don't know the legal term.
Sunset termination.
Huh?
Sunset or termination.
Sunset or termination clause. This is the first time that it's been done in this. And they did it so that we will indeed move to the next phase that will take account of the special and differential treatment, the overcapacity and overfishing aspects that were not dealt with. So you're right. Because of the request of the Pacific Island, we will go into the next phase of negotiations where we will now deal with those issues. So hopefully, by the end of it, we'll have a 2-stage agreement that covers all the bases. But already, just from the first phase, the United Nations Secretary General and everybody feels that what we have now is also tantamount to fulfillment of SDG 14.6, which the UN had asked the WTO to deliver for years and years now. Now, when we move into the next phase, we'll fill the gaps that are missing from the first, and I think that will give us a really comprehensive outlook on fisheries subsidies.
Thank you, Madam. My next question is to the gentleman. We haven't seen the ministerial statement, but what is the outcome of today's meeting? What have we decided in terms of the way forward? Probably an elaboration of what we want.
Thank you, Minister, if I may. Thank you. Yes, and I think what happened is, what do we do from here onwards, following the story of June this year? So I think the key themes under the ministerial statement is that we commit, the region commits to, or the WTO forum members commit to working together to make sure that we don't let the momentum slip away. Understanding a few things that we have to do at national level in terms of the next steps to carry forward what we did achieve in June. But otherwise, there is a collective understanding that we will move forward, or that the ministers have agreed to move forward, commit to working together, and take the steps that are necessary to move us to the next phase of the work. And also in terms of the partial agreement, and also looking ahead to the next wave of negotiations and preparations for that work. Minister, did you want to add to something?
Thank you. I think effectively what has been acknowledged by all the Pacific Island ministers here and all the Pacific Island countries is that we all acknowledge that we were at the forefront of getting this done. And as pointed out rightfully by DG, we must stay at the forefront to get it completed. There are issues that all countries have to deal with internally, but there is an emphasis on the fact that we must get it done quickly. And acknowledging also that it's not just about fisheries, there are other parts to the equation. But because it's a two-stage process, we need to make sure that we continue to work very quickly in conjunction with the WTO and also Pacific Island Forum to actually complete the agreement. And as I had pointed out earlier on also, that it's very important and critical for the Pacific because we have shown solidarity in getting it done, and everybody acknowledges that that's the way forward with us. And we've been at the forefront, and we must remain at the forefront of getting it done quicker than anybody else, because we led the negotiations to get that completed.
Thank you, Minister. We have time for one more question before we wrap this up, if there's any takers.
Madam DG, final question for me. There were also some concerns about the agreement itself. Do you see the agreement going through any legal scrubbing in the near future?
That's a really good question. Yes, there were some delegations that raised that issue, and the Ambassador Santiago Wills, who headed the negotiations, who was the chair of the negotiations for fisheries, made clear that no, there is really no need for any legal scrubbing. I think there were a couple of agreements in the past, like the Trade Facilitation Agreement, that was negotiated somewhat differently. And the committee was set up right at the time it was done. It was in Bali, I think, to do this legal scrubbing. It was a different process. That process does not apply to the fisheries subsidies agreement. So we don't see the need for the legal scrubbing. Thank you.
I just may sneak one more last one in. It's a more general question. In Indonesia this week, you talked about the risk. Sorry, I'll start again. In Indonesia this week, you spoke about the risk of global recession. And I just wondered, given the observations of the last couple of years, what impact could that likely have on vulnerable Pacific Island countries? And what could we possibly do to mitigate against that possibility?
Well, there are very strong global headwinds that every country is facing. As you know, the pandemic is still lingering in some parts of the world. China still is having some lockdowns, sporadic. We have strong inflationary pressures from high food and energy prices. Europe is experiencing unprecedented 400% plus, in some cases, increase in prices. Food prices are high everywhere, including here in the Pacific. So strong headwinds, and central banks are having to tighten monetary policy by increasing interest rates almost all over the world. Particularly in the big countries, this is happening. You've seen double-digit inflation in the UK for the first time in many years. High single digits in the US and others. You have Australia and New Zealand. I don't think inflation is that high in those countries as it is elsewhere, but still, their central banks are also tightening. So what does this mean? Trade used to be a disinflationary instrument, meaning that when you have free and open trade, it means you can bring in goods that are produced more cheaply elsewhere into your economy, and you don't have to experience such high prices. But for the first time, we have this inflation all over. So I guess what happens is, if you have your trading partners that are experiencing these high prices and you're purchasing from them, it might be impacting you in terms of the Pacific Island economies import quite a few things. So that's going to be important in terms of the level of prices here. So we need to get inflation down in the key trading partners so that the Pacific Islands are not so impacted. But I also want to commend you that during the pandemic, you were able to be more self-sufficient, producing a lot of your own food, setting an example. And sometimes when you have a difficult situation, it leads to some good things. So you've shown you're more capable of being self-sustaining, and that can then have a better impact on your economy. But grosso modo, I think we need to reduce the inflationary pressures in many of the big economies that are edging towards recession. Actually, the UK is now in recession, and some other big economies maybe. So that's not good for the world, and not good for the poor in particular.